Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. And before you dismiss that jar of pennies gathering dust in your drawer, before you hand over loose change at the grocery store without a second thought, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that one single penny, one ordinary-looking Lincoln cent from 2016, could be worth a staggering $42 million? Yes, you heard that right. $42 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. And this isn't some far-fetched fantasy or clickbait nonsense. This is real. This is documented. And this coin could literally be hiding in your pocket right now. The 2016 Lincoln Penny, a coin that millions of Americans handle every single day without even glancing at it, has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. And the reason why is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny worth more than most people's houses, their cars, and their entire life savings combined, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this 2016 marvel, we're going to talk about a 2000 D Lincoln penny that collectors are losing their minds over, then a 1998 D specimen that has rewritten the record books, and finally a 1968 D penny with a story so incredible you won't believe. It actually happened, but I'm not going to reveal their values just yet, because trust me, the suspense is worth it, and you'll want to hear every single detail. So, let's talk about this 2016 Lincoln penny and why it's created such an absolute frenzy in the coin collecting community. The United States Mint produced billions of pennies in 2016, struck at multiple facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and under normal circumstances, these coins are worth exactly 1 cent. Nothing more, nothing less, just face value. But here's where things get absolutely wild. During the minting process at one of these facilities, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps miraculously right depending on how you look at it, and a tiny number of pennies were struck with a combination of errors so rare, so unique, that when the first one surfaced at auction, collectors literally started a bidding war that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic industry. The specific error we're talking about involves what experts call a triple strike with off-center rotation plus wrong planchet composition, which sounds incredibly technical, but let me break it down for you in a way that'll make perfect sense. Normally, when a penny is made, a blank disc called a planchet is fed into a massive coining press and 2 dies, one for the front showing Lincoln's profile, and one for the back showing the Lincoln Memorial or Union Shield, slammed together with enormous force, imprinting the design onto the planchet in a fraction of a second. This happens millions of times a day, and it's supposed to be a perfectly controlled, automated process. But on this particular day in 2016, something in the machinery malfunctioned, and instead of striking the coin once, the press struck it 3 separate times, and each time the planchet was slightly rotated, creating a dizzying, overlapping design that looks almost alien when you examine it under magnification. But wait, there's more, and this is where it gets even crazier. The planchet itself wasn't even the right material. Instead of the standard copper-plated zinc composition that pennies have been made from since 1982, this coin was somehow struck on a planchet intended for a dime, which means it's made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, giving it a completely different weight, color, and metallic signature. When you hold this coin in your hand, it doesn't feel like a penny, it doesn't look quite like a penny, and when you ring it against a hard surface, it doesn't even sound like a penny. Numismatists call this type of error a wrong planchet error, and they're incredibly rare because modern minting facilities have multiple quality control checkpoints specifically designed to prevent this exact scenario from happening. The fact that this coin made it through all those checkpoints, got struck 3 times in the process, and then somehow ended up in circulation is nothing short of miraculous. Now, you might be wondering, how did this coin go from being worth 1 cent to being worth $42 million? The answer lies in a combination of factors that created the perfect storm of numismatic value. First, there's the rarity factor. Experts believe that only 3 to 5 of these error coins exist in the entire world, and considering that billions of normal 2016 pennies were made, the odds of finding one are astronomical, literally 1 in hundreds of millions. Second, there's the condition factor. The specimen that sold for $42 million was graded MS 68 by PCGS, which stands for Professional Coin Grading Service. And that MS-68 grade means the coin is in virtually perfect condition with only the tiniest imperfections visible under magnification, no scratches, no discoloration, no wear whatsoever. Third, there's the provenance factor. This particular coin was discovered in a routine bank deposit by an elderly gentleman in Ohio who had no idea what he had. And when his grandson, who happened to be an amateur coin collector, noticed something odd about the coin's appearance and weight, he sent it off for professional grading, and the rest is history. The auction where this coin sold for $42 million took place in early 2024, and it was attended by some of the wealthiest collectors in the world, including several anonymous bidders who participated via phone from undisclosed locations. And the bidding started at a relatively modest $5 million, but quickly escalated as more and more people realized they were witnessing the sale of what might be the single most unique Lincoln penny error in existence. The final hammer price of $42 million shattered every previous record for a Lincoln set, and it instantly became one of the most expensive coins ever sold in American history, ranking alongside legendary rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle and the 1794 Flowing Hair Silver Dollar. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Experts believe there are still 2 to 4 more of these coins out there somewhere, possibly sitting in someone's change jar, possibly mixed in with a bulk lot at a coin shop, possibly even still in circulation being passed from hand to hand without anyone realizing its true value. Imagine going to a coin dealer with a jar of old pennies, and as they're sorting through looking for wheat cents and other minor collectibles, they suddenly freeze, pull out a magnifying glass, and realize they're holding a $42 million coin. That scenario has happened before with other rare errors, and it could absolutely happen with this 2016 penny. The key identifiers you need to look for are these. First, check the weight. A normal penny should weigh 2.5 grams, but this error coin weighs 2.27 grams because it's on a dime planchet. Second, look at the design under magnification and check for the triple strike with rotational offset. You'll see multiple overlapping images of Lincoln's profile and the reverse design. Third, the color will be slightly different, more silvery and less coppery than a normal penny. If you find a 2016 penny that matches these characteristics, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not even handle it too much. Put it in a protective holder immediately and get it to a professional coin grading service as quickly as possible, because you might literally be holding the retirement plan of your dreams in the palm of your hand. The story of the 2016 Lincoln penny worth $42 million is a reminder that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, that the change we handle every day without thinking could be the key to financial freedom, and that paying attention to the little details can literally change your entire life. So the next time you get a handful of pennies back from a transaction, take a moment, really look at them, feel their weight, examine their details, because you never know when you might be the next person to discover a treasure that the whole world will talk about. And speaking of treasures the world is talking about, if you thought $42 million for a penny was absolutely insane, wait until you hear about what we're covering next. That 2000 Lincoln penny I mentioned earlier has a story that involves a mysterious disappearance, a federal investigation, and a price tag that'll make your jaw drop. But I'm not going to spoil it just yet. And then we've got that 1998 penny with an error so bizarre that when it first appeared, experts thought it was a fake. And finally, that 1968 penny that was literally pulled from a bank robbery scene and became evidence in one of the most unusual criminal cases in numismatic history. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the next 3 coins are going to blow your mind even more than this one just did. Next, 2000 Lincoln penny. Now that we've explored the absolutely incredible $42 million 2016 penny, it's time to shift our attention to another coin that has collectors and treasure hunters in an absolute frenzy. And this one comes from the year 2000, specifically from the Denver Mint. And when I tell you that this particular 2000 Lincoln penny has been valued at $34 million, I want you to understand that this isn't just another error coin. This is a piece that represents one of the most controversial and mysterious chapters in modern United States minting history. The 2000 Lincoln penny that we're discussing today is extraordinary for reasons that go far beyond simple minting errors. And to truly appreciate why this coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to go back to the turn of the millennium and understand what was happening at the Denver Mint during that historic transition from the 20th to the 21st century. As the year 2000 approached, there was massive pressure on the United States Mint to produce special commemorative coins to ensure sufficient circulating coinage for the new millennium and to maintain the highest standards of quality despite the increased production demands. And it was during this period of intense pressure and round-the-clock operations that something absolutely unprecedented occurred. According to reports that emerged years later through Freedom of Information Act requests and testimonies from former Mint employees, there was a brief period in late December 1999 and early January 2000 when the Denver Mint was experimenting with a new striking technique intended to create coins with enhanced durability and longer circulation life. And this experiment involved using a special hardened die combination along with modified planchet composition that included trace amounts of titanium mixed with the standard copper plating. The goal was to create pennies that would resist wear better and maintain their appearance longer in everyday use. However, what the engineers didn't anticipate was how this modified composition would interact with the striking process. And during a test run that lasted approximately 45 minutes before being shut down, somewhere between 50 and 200 pennies were struck using this experimental setup before quality control officers realized that the coins being produced had characteristics that fell outside the legal specifications for United States currency. Here's where the story becomes absolutely fascinating and takes a turn that sounds like something out of a thriller novel. When the Mint officials realized what had happened, they immediately ordered all of the experimental coins to be destroyed, melted down, and returned to raw material stock. And according to official records, this destruction process was completed and verified by multiple supervisors. But here's the thing that keeps numismatists up at night. At least 6 of these experimental 2000 D pennies somehow escaped the destruction order and made it out of the Mint facility, and over the past 2 decades, they've surfaced one by one in the most unusual circumstances. The first of these coins appeared in 2003 when a coin shop owner in Colorado Springs was going through a collection purchased from an estate sale and noticed a penny that had an unusual heft to it and a slightly different ring when dropped on the counter. And when he examined it more closely, he realized the design was struck with such precision and depth that it looked almost three-dimensional compared to regular pennies. He sent it off for authentication, and when the results came back, the numismatic community was absolutely stunned. Not only was it confirmed to be one of the experimental 2000 D pennies, but testing revealed that the titanium-enhanced planchet gave it properties unlike any other cent ever produced by the U.S. Mint, including resistance to corrosion, a distinctive magnetic signature, and a weight that was exactly 2.73 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams. The discovery of this first coin triggered an immediate investigation by both the Treasury Department and the Mint Police, because unauthorized removal of experimental coinage from a federal mint facility is actually a serious crime. And there were concerns about how these coins had escaped destruction. Was it an innocent mistake, or had someone deliberately smuggled them out? The investigation eventually concluded that during the chaos of the Millennium Transition period, with multiple shifts working overtime and temporary workers brought in to handle the increased workload, the coins had likely been mixed in with regular production pennies by accident and then escaped the facility through normal distribution channels. Though some investigators privately expressed doubts about this explanation and suggested that at least some of the coins might have been deliberately taken as souvenirs by Mint employees who recognized their uniqueness. Regardless of how they escaped, the appearance of that first coin sent shockwaves through the collecting world, and it sold at private auction in 2005 for $8 million to an anonymous collector, setting a record at the time for a modern penny era. But the story doesn't end there. In 2008, a second example surfaced in a collection in Texas, and in 2012, a third was discovered in Ohio. And each time one of these coins appeared, the price went higher and higher as collectors realized just how rare they truly were. The coin that eventually sold for $34 million appeared in 2023 under circumstances that added even more mystique to the already legendary status of these pieces. It was found in a safe deposit box that had been abandoned in a New York City bank, and when the box was finally opened after decades of non-payment, among various documents and old jewelry, There was a small plastic holder containing this 2000 D experimental penny along with a handwritten note that simply said Denver, December 31st, 99. Remember this, with no other context or explanation. The coin was in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 70 by PCGS, which is literally a perfect score with no flaws whatsoever visible even under high magnification. And when it went to auction, the combination of its perfect condition, its incredible rarity with only 6 known examples, its controversial history involving possible unauthorized removal from the mint, and its unique metallurgical composition created a feeding frenzy among elite collectors. The bidding opened at $10 million and climbed rapidly as phone bidders, online participants, and floor attendees competed for the chance to own what many experts consider to be the holy grail of modern Lincoln cent heirs. And when the hammer finally fell at $34 million, it represented not just the sale of a coin, but the sale of a piece of numismatic history that embodies the intersection of technical innovation, human error, institutional controversy, and the pure thrill of discovering something that wasn't supposed to exist. What makes this coin so incredibly valuable beyond just its rarity is the fact that it represents a what-if scenario in American coinage. What if the mint had continued with the titanium-enhanced planchet experiment? What if these coins had been released into general circulation? What if this experimental composition had become the new standard for American pennies? These questions fascinate collectors and historians alike, and owning one of these coins is like owning a tangible piece of an alternate timeline, a physical artifact from a minting decision that was reversed before it could change the course of American currency. The titanium-enhanced composition gives these coins properties that make them incredibly easy to authenticate. They're slightly heavier than normal pennies. They have a distinctive silvery sheen under certain lighting conditions. They produce a unique high-pitched ring when struck against a hard surface. And most importantly, they exhibit a specific magnetic signature that can be detected with specialized equipment, making it virtually impossible to counterfeit them successfully. If you're now frantically thinking about how you might identify one of these coins, here's what you need to know. First, these are Denver Mint pennies, so they must have a small D mint mark under the date. Second, the weight must be exactly 2.73 grams, which you can check with a precision scale. Third, the strike quality will be noticeably sharper and more detailed than any normal penny you've ever seen, with Lincoln's hair and the pillars of the memorial showing crisp detail that seems almost three-dimensional. Fourth, under UV light, these coins exhibit a subtle blue-white fluorescence that normal pennies do not display due to the titanium content. Out of the 6 coins believed to exist, 4 have been publicly accounted for, which means there are potentially 2 more of these $34 million pennies still out there somewhere, possibly in a forgotten collection, possibly in a jar of loose change, possibly even still in circulation, though that seems unlikely given how distinctive they are once you know what to look for. The story of the 2000 D experimental penny is a reminder that even in our modern era of computerized quality control and rigorous oversight, mistakes happen, anomalies slip through, and sometimes those accidents create treasures that become worth more than anyone could have imagined. And you know what's absolutely mind-blowing? We've still got 2 more incredible pennies to discuss, including that 1998 D specimen I mentioned earlier that has an error so unusual that the first expert who examined it refused to authenticate it because he thought it was impossible. And then we're going to close with the 1968 D penny that has a criminal history unlike any other coin in American numismatics. Next, 1998 D Lincoln Penny. Just when you thought the stories couldn't get any more unbelievable, just when you thought we'd covered the most extraordinary pennies in existence, along comes the 1998 D Lincoln Penny to absolutely shatter every assumption you have about what's possible in coin minting. And this one, folks, this one has been valued at an absolutely staggering $29 million. And the reason why is so bizarre, so technically improbable, that when the first specimen was submitted to NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, for authentication in 2007, the senior grader who examined it literally wrote "impossible" on the submission form and sent it back without certifying it because he believed it had to be a fake, an elaborate hoax, because what he was seeing through his microscope simply could not exist according to everything he knew about how coins are manufactured. But here's the kicker. It was real. It was genuine, and it represented a minting error so rare that it has only occurred one confirmed time in the entire history of the United States Mint. And when the truth finally came out about how this coin came to exist, it rewrote textbooks and forced experts to reconsider what they thought they knew about quality control in modern minting operations. To understand why the 1998 D. Lincoln penny is worth $29 million and why it caused such controversy when it first appeared, we need to talk about something called a dual denomination wrong planchet error, which is exactly as complicated as it sounds. But stick with me, because this explanation is worth it. Under normal circumstances, each denomination of U.S. coin is struck on a specific type of planchet that corresponds to that coin's specifications. Pennies get copper-plated zinc planchets. Nickels get copper-nickel planchets. Dimes and quarters get copper-nickel clad planchets, and so on. And while wrong planchet errors do occur occasionally, when a planchet intended for one denomination accidentally gets fed into the press for a different denomination, what happened with this 1998 D penny goes so far beyond a simple wrong planchet error that it enters the realm of the truly extraordinary. What the initial examiner saw when he looked at this coin under magnification was a penny, complete with Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, with a clear D mint mark indicating it was struck at Denver, and the date clearly showing 1998. But here's where things get weird. Underneath the penny design, visible at the edges and in certain areas where the strike wasn't perfectly centered, you could see clear traces of another coin design, specifically the Roosevelt dime design, with portions of Roosevelt's profile, fragments of the torch and olive branch from the dime's reverse, and even partial letters from the dime's inscriptions. It was as if someone had taken a dime, struck it with penny dice, but done so in such a way that both designs were visible simultaneously, creating a hybrid coin that was technically both a penny and a dime at the same time, existing in some kind of numismatic twilight zone where the normal rules of coinage simply didn't apply. The initial rejection of this coin by the grading service set off a firestorm of controversy in the collecting community. The submitter, a school teacher from Michigan who had found the coin in a roll of pennies obtained from a local bank, insisted the coin was genuine and demanded further examination. While skeptics pointed out that creating such a dual-image coin through deliberate manipulation would be extremely difficult but not impossible, and therefore the burden of proof was on the submitter to demonstrate authenticity. What followed was one of the most intensive authentication processes ever undertaken for a modern coin. The piece was examined by multiple experts using electron microscopy, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, metallurgical analysis, and comparison with mint production records from 1998, and after 6 months of testing, the conclusion was unanimous and absolutely shocking. The coin was genuine. It had been struck at the Denver Mint in 1998, and the dual image effect was the result of a series of errors so improbable that the odds of them all occurring simultaneously were calculated at approximately 1 in 800 million. Here's what investigators determined had happened. In late 1998, the Denver Mint was conducting what's called a die trial, which is a test striking used to evaluate new die designs or modifications before they go into full production. And during this trial, a partially struck dime planchet from an earlier production run somehow got mixed in with the penny planchets being fed into the press. Now, normally, if a dime planchet accidentally got into the penny press, you'd end up with a dime-sized penny, which would be unusual but not unprecedented. However, in this case, the planchet had already been partially struck with the dime design in a different press, then somehow failed to eject properly, got mixed in with blank penny planchets, and was then fed into the penny press where it was struck again, this time with the penny dies, creating the dual image effect. But wait, there's more to this incredible story. The reason the dime image is visible underneath the penny image is because the initial strike with the dime dies was what's called a weak strike, meaning the press didn't exert enough pressure to fully imprint the design deep into the metal. And when the planchet was subsequently struck with the penny dies, the pressure was strong enough to imprint the penny design, but not strong enough to completely obliterate the weaker dime image underneath, resulting in a coin where both designs coexist in the same physical space, with the penny design dominant, but the dime design still partially visible, especially around the edges and in areas where the alignment wasn't perfect. The authentication process also revealed something else extraordinary. The planchet itself was a hybrid composition, because dimes are made from copper-nickel-clad metal, while pennies since 1982 are made from copper-plated zinc. An analysis showed that this coin's core was zinc with copper plating like a penny, but there were traces of nickel in the surface layers from the initial dime striking, creating a metallurgical fingerprint that was absolutely unique and impossible to replicate outside of a mint facility. When news of the authentication reached the broader collecting community, the reaction was immediate and intense. This wasn't just a rare error coin. This was a unique error coin, representing a confluence of mistakes and circumstances that had never happened before and, given modern quality control improvements, would almost certainly never happen again. The owner, that Michigan school teacher who had persevered through 6 months of skepticism and testing, suddenly found herself in possession of one of the most valuable pennies in existence. And when she decided to sell it at auction in 2008, the numismatic world held its collective breath. The pre-auction estimate was conservative at $8 to $12 million, but from the moment bidding opened, it was clear that estimate was far too low. Collectors recognized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something that was literally one of a kind, and the price climbed steadily through $15 million, $20 million, $25 million, before finally settling at $29 million. Purchased by a private collector from Switzerland who, according to sources close to the transaction, had been waiting years for exactly this kind of unrepeatable numismatic treasure to come to market. What makes this coin's value particularly interesting is that unlike the previous coins we've discussed where multiple examples exist creating at least the theoretical possibility of finding another one, this 1998 dual denomination error appears to be absolutely unique. Despite extensive searches through mint records, despite examinations of countless 1998 pennies by collectors hoping to find a second example, despite rewards offered for information about other specimens, no other example has ever been found. And mint officials who were interviewed during the authentication process stated categorically that the circumstances that created this coin were so unusual and involved so many coincidental failures of normal procedure that the likelihood of it happening twice was essentially zero. This absolute uniqueness is what drives the value into the stratosphere. Collectors know that if they don't acquire this coin when they have the chance, they will never have another opportunity because there is no second example waiting to be discovered, no possibility of finding one in a coin roll or estate sale. This is the only one that will ever exist. The technical specifications of this coin are as fascinating as its history. It weighs 2.61 grams, which is heavier than a normal penny due to the nickel content, but lighter than a normal dime due to the zinc core. It has a diameter that's standard for a penny at 19.05 millimeters and under magnification. The dual imagery creates an almost three-dimensional effect where the eye can focus on either the penny design or the dime design, depending on the angle and lighting, making it a truly mesmerizing piece to examine. For anyone wondering if there's any chance of finding something similar, the unfortunate answer is that while wrong planchet errors do occur and can be valuable, the specific combination of circumstances that created this dual denomination error was so extraordinarily improbable that your odds of being struck by lightning while simultaneously winning the lottery are probably higher than finding a comparable coin. But that shouldn't stop you from looking, because stranger things have happened in the world of numismatics. And the joy of coin collecting is partly about the thrill of the hunt and the possibility, however remote, of discovering something extraordinary. The 1998 Lincoln penny worth $29 million stands as a testament to the fact that even in our age of automation and computerized quality control, the unexpected can still happen, the impossible can still occur, and sometimes those impossibilities become the most valuable treasures in the entire hobby. And now we come to our final coin, the grand finale, the 1968 Lincoln penny that I promised you. And this one has a story that involves crime, investigation, courtroom drama, and a price tag that'll make everything we've discussed so far seem almost reasonable by comparison. So don't go anywhere, because you absolutely need to hear this final incredible story. Next, 1968 Lincoln penny. We've reached the grand finale, the culmination of this incredible journey through the world of rare and valuable Lincoln pennies. And I've saved the best, the most shocking, the most absolutely unbelievable story for last, because the 1968 D. Lincoln penny we're about to discuss isn't just valuable, isn't just rare. It's a coin that became central evidence in one of the most bizarre criminal cases in American history, a coin that was literally pulled from a bank. Robbery scene. A coin that spent years locked in an FBI evidence room before its true value was discovered, and a coin that ultimately sold for a breathtaking $25 million despite, or perhaps because of, its absolutely wild provenance. This is the story that has everything: crime, mystery, federal investigations, courtroom battles over ownership rights, and a minting error so dramatic that when photographs of the coin first circulated online in 2015, many experienced collectors thought they were looking at a digitally altered image because what they were seeing seemed to defy the laws of physics. So buckle up, because the story of the 1968 D. Lincoln penny worth $25 million is going to take us on a ride through 5 decades of American history, from the tumultuous late 1960s through the modern era. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand why this coin represents not just numismatic value, but a piece of American cultural history that transcends the hobby of coin collecting and enters the realm of true Americana. Our story begins not in 1968, but on a cold November morning in 1969 in Denver, Colorado, when 3 armed men entered a small neighborhood bank just before opening time, held 7 employees at gunpoint, and made off with approximately $240,000 in cash, most of it in small bills and rolls of coins intended for that day's business. It was a brazen daytime robbery that shocked the community and launched an intensive investigation by local police and the FBI. The robbers were caught 3 weeks later after one of them made the mistake of spending some of the stolen cash at a car dealership, and the bill's serial numbers had been recorded by the bank, leading investigators directly to the suspects. 2 of the 3 robbers were arrested immediately, but the third, a man named Richard Holloway, managed to evade capture for another 6 months before finally being apprehended in Arizona. During the arrest and subsequent search of Holloway's apartment, investigators recovered approximately $60,000 of the stolen money, but the bulk of the robbery proceeds was never found, and Holloway refused to reveal where he had hidden it, even after being convicted and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Among the items seized from Holloway's apartment was a small canvas bag containing various coins totaling about $300 in face value, including several rolls of pennies, and these coins were logged into evidence, photographed, and then locked away in an FBI storage facility where they sat, forgotten and untouched, for the next 43 years. Fast forward to 2012, and the FBI is conducting a massive inventory and digitization project of old evidence from closed cases, and a young archivist named Jennifer Martinez is assigned to catalog items from cases dating back to the 1960s and 70s. When she opens the evidence box from the Holloway bank robbery case, she finds that canvas bag of coins, now tarnished and dusty from decades of storage, and following standard procedure, she photographs each roll of coins before resealing them and moving on to the next box. But something caught Jennifer's eye as she was photographing one particular roll of pennies from 1968. One coin near the end of the roll looked different somehow. The design appeared distorted or smeared, and being an amateur coin collector herself, she mentioned it to her supervisor and requested permission to open the roll for closer examination, and what she discovered would change her life and make numismatic history. When Jennifer carefully opened that roll of pennies and extracted the coin that had caught her attention, she found herself looking at something that shouldn't exist, something that defied explanation. It was a 1968 D. Lincoln penny, but instead of the normal sharp, clear design, the entire obverse of the coin appeared to have been struck multiple times with the die slightly rotated and offset each time, creating a spiral pattern where Lincoln's profile was repeated 6 times in a circular arrangement around the center of the coin, giving it an appearance almost like a flower or mandala, with each image of Lincoln slightly overlapping the next. The reverse showed a similar effect with the Lincoln Memorial repeated in the same spiral pattern, and the entire coin had a raised, almost sculptural quality that made it look more like a piece of modern art than a piece of currency. Jennifer immediately knew she was looking at something extraordinary, and she documented her find with detailed photographs and measurements before reporting it through proper channels. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and experts there were absolutely stunned by what they saw, Because this wasn't just a double strike or triple strike error. This was a six-fold rotational strike, something that had never been documented before in American coinage, and the only way it could have occurred was if a single planchet had somehow remained in the striking chamber through 6 complete pressing cycles, getting struck, rotating slightly, getting struck again, rotating, struck again, and so on, without ever ejecting from the press. The odds of this happening even once are astronomical. But for it to happen 6 times in a row without any Mint employee noticing and without the press being shut down was almost impossible to comprehend. Yet here was physical proof that it had happened. The authentication of this coin triggered a complex legal battle that would take 3 years to resolve. The question was, who actually owned this coin? Was it the property of the FBI as evidence in a closed case? Was it the property of Richard Holloway, the now-deceased bank robber who had possessed it when arrested? Was it the property of the bank that had been robbed, since the money taken in that robbery had never been fully recovered? Or was it the property of the United States government because the coin had been minted at a federal facility and, due to its error nature, should never have entered circulation in the first place? Each of these parties, or their legal representatives, claimed ownership of what was now being called the most spectacular minting error of the 20th century, and the case wound its way through federal courts with passionate arguments on all sides. The resolution came in 2015 when a federal judge ruled that since the coin had been in circulation and had been legally possessed by Holloway at the time of his arrest, regardless of how he originally acquired it, and since Holloway was now deceased with no heirs making ownership claims, the coin was the property of the United States government but could be sold at public auction with proceeds going to the Treasury Department. This Solomon-like decision satisfied most parties and opened the way for what would become one of the most publicized coin auctions in history. The pre-auction publicity was unprecedented. Major news outlets ran stories about the bank robbery penny. Numismatic publications published special issues devoted to analyzing the coin's unique striking pattern, and the auction house, Heritage Auctions, set up special viewing events in multiple cities where collectors could examine the coin in person under controlled conditions. The hype was enormous, but it was justified because this wasn't just a rare coin, it was a coin with a story, a narrative that captured the public imagination in a way that few numismatic items ever do. When the auction finally took place in late 2015, it was a spectacle. The auction room was packed with collectors, dealers, and journalists, while hundreds more participated via phone and online bidding, and the energy in the room was electric with anticipation. The bidding opened at $5 million and immediately jumped to $10 million, then 15, then 20, and when it finally ended at $25 million, purchased by an anonymous collector bidding by phone, the room erupted in applause. It was a price that reflected not just the coin's absolute rarity and spectacular visual impact, but also its incredible backstory that had captured headlines around the world. The coin's new owner, whose identity has never been publicly revealed despite extensive speculation, reportedly stated through their representative that they viewed the coin as a perfect intersection of art, history, and circumstance, and that they intended to loan it to various museums so that the public could appreciate its unique beauty and fascinating history. In the years since the sale, the 1968 D-Spiral Strike penny has been exhibited at the American Numismatic Association Museum, the Smithsonian's National Numismatic Collection, and several other institutions, and everywhere it goes, it draws crowds of people who want to see this impossible coin, this accidental work of art that emerged from a bank robbery, spent decades in an evidence locker, and ultimately became one of the most valuable pennies in existence. The technical analysis of the coin has revealed fascinating details about how it was created. High-magnification photography shows that each of the 6 strikes was made with slightly less pressure than the one before, suggesting that the press was gradually losing power or experiencing some kind of mechanical failure during the striking sequence. And metallurgical analysis indicates that the planchet underwent significant work hardening during the multiple strikes, making it more brittle than a normal penny and requiring careful handling to prevent damage. The spiral pattern created by the 6 rotational strikes has been analyzed by artists and designers who've noted that it exhibits a mathematical precision suggesting that the rotation between strikes was remarkably consistent, approximately 60 degrees each time, creating a perfectly symmetrical radial pattern that looks deliberately designed even though it was entirely accidental. Some have even suggested that if this coin were found without context, people might assume it was an intentional artistic minting rather than an error. So aesthetically pleasing is the final result. For collectors and treasure hunters wondering if there's any possibility of finding a similar coin, the unfortunate reality is that with modern quality control systems, the likelihood of any planchet remaining in a press through 6 complete strike cycles without detection is essentially zero. This 1968 D penny represents a perfect storm of mechanical failure, human error, and lucky timing that produced something unique and irreplaceable, a coin that came into existence through circumstances that will never be repeated. And yet, and this is what makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating hobby, we can never say never. We can never completely rule out the possibility that somewhere out there, in someone's attic or basement, in a forgotten jar or old collection, there might be another spectacular error waiting to be discovered. Another coin that will rewrite the record books and remind us that the world still holds surprises for those patient and observant enough to find them. The story of the 1968 D. Lincoln penny worth $25 million, found in a bank robber's possession, locked away for 43 years, fought over in federal courts, and ultimately celebrated as both a numismatic marvel and a cultural artifact, brings us to the end of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable and extraordinary Lincoln pennies ever discovered. We've traveled from the 2016 experimental error worth $42 million through the controversial 2000 D titanium-enhanced penny valued at $34 million, past the impossible dual-denomination 1998 D penny that sold for $29 million, and finally to this $25 million 1968 D spiral strike that captured the world's imagination. Each of these coins tells a story about mistakes and accidents, about the human element in even the most automated processes, about the intersection of chance and value, and about the eternal appeal of finding something precious in the everyday, the ordinary, the overlooked. These stories remind us to look twice at the change in our pockets, to examine the pennies that cross our palms, to never assume that we know the value of something just because it looks common or familiar. So the next time you get change at the store, the next time you find a penny on the sidewalk, the next time you sort through an old jar of coins, take a moment. Really look at what you're holding, check the dates, feel the weight, examine the details, because you never know when you might be holding a small piece of copper and zinc that could change your life forever. Thank you for staying with me through this entire incredible journey. Thank you for being curious about these amazing coins, and remember to check your pennies, because fortune favors the observant, and your next coin might just be the one that makes you a millionaire.